So hey guys, Ryan Garland here, founder and chairman of Paradyme. I actually am here with a gentleman that's going to share with you some of the techniques that he's using and why it is we're going to bring in the solar aspect to our barn cage development. So this is a private video for only you, our LP investors, to see, or anybody potentially looking to invest. And you're going to understand more about the partnership and what it is we're trying to accomplish, not only on this project, but for the most part, every project moving forward. So there'll be a lot of fruit. So please introduce yourself and share with everybody a little bit about your background, and we'll just kind of go from there.
You bet. Thanks for having me. Babe Kilgore, Chief N.E.R.D of a company called N.E.R.D. N.E.R.D stands for Net Zero Energy Restoration Development. So really, in a nutshell, we're a sustainable construction services company that does critical infrastructure for commercial industrial buildings in a renewable energy standpoint, right? And then on the development side, we help develop and build out energy assets like solar, batteries, and really the short version is there's a transition happening right now, and it's what's called the decentralization of power. So 80, 90 years ago, they decided to put power plants away from cities and not pollute cities, right? And they had to build an infrastructure to do that. That infrastructure is the utility lines and things you see today. What people don't realize is that as we move into an all-electric world with electric vehicles and even construction's moving to more electric, those utilities can't meet the demands. And on top of that, those transportation fees are really expensive. So given how policy and law has changed recently, we can build solar and storage assets and keep that money inside with the developer and give discounts to the homeowners and not have all that excess transportation fees and costs. So that's the short version of what we do.
So your relationship with Rio, which is a friend of mine, tell us a little bit about your acquisition of his company and then all of the aspects that you guys offer in your company.
Yeah, so one of our core philosophies as a company is called advocacy. So we want to be an advocate to the consumer, an advocate to the developer, right? From big utility. I don't hate utilities. I think it's an old structure. There's a lot of industries like that. And so Rio's
it's time for innovation.
Yeah, there's a better way to do it, man.
Right. There totally is.
This is like an 80, 100-year-old way to do it is where they're doing it now.
Right.
So Rio had a really nice restoration business. So they were an advocate for consumers on helping them get their roofs restored through insurance if there was damage. Like, these big insurance, if you don't give it within a certain window of time, you can't file a claim and get it repaired. Yeah. And I see their team working with, single women, 81 years old, and they forgot to file it or didn't know how, and no one is there to help them. And their company was doing that. So we acquired their business for the restoration side. So we do roofing and all sorts. And then when we do roof, we can have solar, right? So it's a nice marriage. And that's how I met Rio and we acquired his company in the process.
And so one of the reasons why you and I connected was also to talk more about you coming in to provide solar for our barn caves project, which is 430,000 square feet, give or take. Probably going to be a little bit more when we're done, not including our 30,000 square foot gym. And we wanted to talk more about bringing in solar to that project. But the cost for us as a developer to put in solar was going to be problematic. It was just going to bust my pro forma. But that's when you came in with a really good idea and what it is that you do. So if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about the fund and kind of the structure of that and kind of how that would work, even for my LP partners as far as my investors, and then also me as an operator owner, and how that also works for you and how you also make money as well.
Yeah, so depending on how deep you want to get in the weeds here, the shortest version is there are really great tax incentives and depreciation schedules in renewable energy. And so we have a fund where we come in with a developer and say, look, instead of having a traditional solar and battery company come in and they'll bill you guys this and you'll sell it for this and take a margin and you got to complicate the sale and work with the owner and all this other stuff to get that deal done. We come in and we pay for all of it. Solar, they want battery, great. If they want backup power, great. We can build all of that in.
And this obviously is not something that you do for like one-off individual homeowners. You have to deal with much larger scale projects with a lot more power.
It works with much larger scale projects.
Right.
These are going to be powered individually, so we will have a version in about 2 months that comes out that's for individual homeowners in their particular cases. But it's not as advantageous when you can do it all at the same time.
Sure.
Because we can bring costs down and we pass that on to the consumer. So really what happens is we come in and pay for it all. There's really great tax incentives for those on the investment side. We raise tax equity, do all sorts of cool stuff there. And we get to those details if this looks appealing or interesting. But the consumer gets at least 10 to 20% off their power bill, what they would pay for what I'll call dirty power, utility power. And they get a discount. It's less expensive to run their home. And then the developer actually participates and owns a piece of that revenue stream for life.
Right.
As long as they pay their bill, they'll get to participate. And so it's really a 25-year annuity that we build, and the homeowner wins, the developer wins, and then my company wins.
And obviously, as a developer, I'm always going to look at saving costs to the consumer.
Yeah.
So I could pass that power savings over to the consumer, and then we keep the tax incentives and the cash flow by selling power, right? And then you guys also have an ability to make some coin too, which will also be on selling power and additional tax incentives as well.
Yeah, so the tax incentives will come through the fund, and we can pass those back to investment groups or resell it as tax equity to give tax savings.
Right.
But you're exactly right. The consumer gets a cleaner running home, I'll call it.
Right.
They get control of their power. More than anything I'm telling you right now, we have not seen anything yet on what's going to happen with utility rates, because as all these EVs come online, it's not like you can just flip a switch and turn power on. Like there's a Palo
They're at
Verde
capacity right now.
Yeah, the Palo Verde power plant here is the biggest nuclear power plant west of the Mississippi. It takes a day and a half to turn on. So if you want to have more power, a heat wave comes in, you can't just flip a switch. That's why California has rolling brownouts or blackouts, and Texas has them. They can't literally meet the power. So what's going to happen is they're going to rebuild the infrastructure. There's mandates now for clean power, forcing utilities to do upgrades. Who pays for those upgrades? It's the consumer.
Yeah, well, that and tax increases.
Yeah.
And so the only way to put in the money for the infrastructure, and it's not that it's little money. These are hundreds of millions of dollars inside a city or a county or what have you. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, there's a couple places in Texas that over the last 3 years they have had almost a 75% increase in power.
Yeah. Well, I believe it from being in California.
Yeah, so we can levelize those costs for the next 25 years for the homeowner. So you as a developer get to market a cleaner, greener home, but a more affordable house to live in forever.
Yeah.
And then you make some money long-term on the annuity, and the homeowner saves a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So it's really nice.
Yeah, and so that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. So if I'm able to save money for our consumer, we're making money, and then we can pass over those costs because you guys are putting up the capital, right? My budget doesn't change.
That's right.
So, and it's easier and cheaper for you guys to get involved this early in the stage, because as I'm building out the infrastructure of the whole entire project, you guys are tying in, ultimately bringing your costs down. That's why it makes more sense to do this on a much larger scale, and doing this on the top of a residential project like this. We're going to be one of the largest solar fields in the state of Arizona, I believe, especially on the resi side. So I look at this as not only, so when I brought this up to the city, when I was going in for planning, as soon as I told them that we're bringing in more on the private equity play of solar for this entire project, I mean, the energy in that office changed. They're like, all the way down to the fire chief is going, okay, this is really cool what you guys are doing here. We need that. Because just like every other city that's outside California, it's expanding and blowing up. So the very first thing they're doing is infrastructure, and the issues with infrastructure and power and utility costs keep going up. So if we're able to assist, in essence, make this entire project run off our own utility, right, as far as power, that doesn't stress their grid, because it's a lot of units coming on.
That's right.
So we're getting a lot more support. They're like, okay, now you're getting attainable living, which we need. We're getting tax revenue, and you're not stressing our infrastructure anymore. Like, this is a big deal for them. And they're like, that's what you're seeing the support so much from multiple jurisdictions, but one being the city or county, wanting developers to be very innovative, coming in with that green building material, solar components, helping provide power too. Because I think in your calculations, we're not only doing the calculations off of what the uses would be per unit, but you're also providing power back to the utility.
Yeah, depending on the utility and what they need in that area, we can definitely do that. So we're actually working with some utilities now in what are called virtual power plant systems. So we put on an entire community online that has a storage component to it. If the utility needs some power, they can pull from those batteries, and they'll cut a check for that and it's going to be at like 1/10 the cost they have to pay other utilities, because the other utilities, they don't play nice in the sandbox.
No, they don't. Because they know they got you backed into a corner.
Yeah, and so it's going to stabilize the grid in multiple cities. We have some city platforms. We have an entire city that wants to back an entire platform of thousands and thousands of residents.
Wow.
So we turn this on with one group that works with school districts and municipalities on grants and tax.
Yep.
And they have already about $500 million worth of projects in the pipeline getting vetted out. And every single one is loving it as a win, because it's nothing to stress their budgets out. They all get a discount and they save money long term.
Perfect. Well, that's all we really wanted to do, is just kind of bring it to our network's awareness of what we're doing with the solar component and that it exists. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, wait, I have to call that one solar group that comes in and does the solar in my house, and I have to lease it back, and I have to do this, I have to do that. That's not how this is going to work. We're, in essence, going to pass on that savings, and that's already going to be built into our unit, direct to the person who's going to buy it. They don't have to worry about anything. They just wipe their hands of it, and they're saving on power, and this is killer. So ultimately making that unit more desirable and more friendly, to be honest with you, meaning, last thing I do is when I bought a big house, I didn't think of utilities. Oh my goodness, I forgot how much expensive my utilities were going to be.
Yeah.
If you can compress your utilities, that's so much better. But then again, you're helping everybody, and that's important. Again, utilities, city, all the infrastructure. If it's a win-win, everyone's going to make money, and it's the likelihood of that investment to go well always goes up. So that's always been my plan. So thank you very much for sharing your story. I think is there anything else you want to add?
No, excited the project. Appreciate you guys hearing us out, and it should be a massive win and a better product and better for the consumer. So everybody should win.
Perfect. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.